This is a brief history of U.S. and global biowarfare, and a warning. A warning to all that would commit white genocide. A warning to all of the non-white races who think that you're going to actually be allowed to invade, take over, and genocide the white European countries and peoples of those countries, the white Europeans that settled and civilized America and the world. This is a warning, not coming from a racist standpoint, although I really don't care if somebody calls me racist, could care less. It's a meaningless word. It, like other words, troll, anti-Semite, they have no more meaning because they have been watered down to that extent and overused by all of the ignorant masses who cannot give an intelligent retort. They cannot have an intelligent debate, because to have an intelligent debate, you have to have intelligence. You have to be fueled by the willingness to learn and not by anger, because you have not succeeded in life. And then you have the controllers of society using you like they use all tools to wield for their purposes. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this history of biowarfare and the warning that all people, white and non-white, liberal, conservative, Republican, Democrat, Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, it does not matter. This is a warning to all that would propagate the genocide of any race, but most specifically, the white race. And here's why. I made a video back in February of 2015, and that video was titled, and of course it's on my other channel, the Anti-COINTELPRO Show. That video is titled, "For Those Who Do Not Study and Remember History, well, you're doomed. You're just quite simply doomed." About a year later, I made another video, Zika, Hitler's Revenge. The hammer that I predicted a solid year ago is coming down now. Because those that would invade for a free lunch and a free ride, free housing, who think they are taking over, think again. You're being manipulated. And let me tell you why. U.S. biowarfare. Well, let me go ahead and backtrack. Zika. Well, let me go ahead and go forward before I backtrack. Zika is a race-specific biological weapon. It's not affecting whites. It's not affecting any other race but the Hispanic race. And the U.S. has a history, a long history, going back to when we first conquered America. In 1519, Hernan Cortez landed in Mexico, followed by more Spaniards. And I'm not going to go over this whole history because you can watch the entire history on the first two videos that I referred to. But basically, in 1519, the Spanish invaded and took over, destroyed the Aztecs, using not weapons because they were very, very, very few in numbers in opposition to the Aztecs. What they used was disease, was the genetic bioweapon that was introduced hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years before Hernan Cortez even existed. And this PDF delineates exactly what happened to the Aztecs, who were beaten and destroyed not by conventional weapons, but by the bioweapon called smallpox. Now, next, we're going to move on to the siege of Fort Pitt. And this was in 1763. Fort Pitt was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That's where we get the name for Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, from the siege of Fort Pitt. And this delineates the lessons that were learned by the people who followed Hernan Cortez and settled and civilized America. In 1758, General John Forbes' expedition was successful in part because of the Treaty of Easton, in which American Indians agreed to their alliance with the French American Indians, primarily the Six Nations, Delawares, and Shawnees. So this is where the first state, Delaware, got its name, from one of those Indian nations. So basically, because I'm not going to drag this video out any longer than many of you viewers that are going to watch this have the attention span to actually pay attention to. If you would like to read and understand exactly what happened at the siege of Fort Pitt, I of course will leave links as well as screen caps to all historical documentations. But basically, the biological warfare, the biological weapon called smallpox, was once again used. Here we have a little excerpt out of the Wikipedia information. Out of our regard to them, we gave them 2 blankets and a handkerchief out of the smallpox hospital. I hope it will have the desired effect. Here you have the invoice for said blankets and handkerchief and 1 linen that was covered with smallpox that swept through the Indian nations like a storm front, like a hurricane, like a tornado, decimating all non-whites, because the Indians didn't have antibiotics. They didn't have medicine like the whites did. Decimated those 6 Indian nations, so they were no longer an issue. They were no longer a roadblock to the conquering of America. Going back to the Zika virus, where did the Zika virus come from? You know, a lot of people will tell you that it came from a genetically modified mosquito. Not so quick. The Zika virus and the patent holder of the Zika virus is none other than the Rockefeller Foundation. And here you have the patent, Zika virus, ATCC VR-84, that the Zika virus came from. Not a mosquito. No, because in many cases, these Zika viruses are disseminated in the winter months when not a one mosquito can survive. Just look up in the air. Those planes with the quote-unquote contrails coming out in all types of weather, hot, cold, seasonal, doesn't matter, because they're not contrails. They are chemtrails that are loaded with these biological agents. So what the U.S. government, in coordination with the Zionists that control everything still today, the Khazarian Zionists that still control everything to this day, they got together and they used the planes that are not putting out contrails, they are putting out chemtrails, and they are dosing all of the the Saturday and Sunday goers to the park, the park patrons at my park, used to be whites, now it's all Hispanic. Okay, well, not all, let's say 95% Hispanic, 1% Asian, 1% something else, and 3% white. And that's just from a layman's observation. And I've been going to this park for 50 years, so I think I have a foundation to make an educated guesstimation, so to speak. What else happened in 1947? Because we know the Zika virus, as you can clearly see, was patented in 1947. Well, 1947, Roswell. No, not Roswell. Roswell was nothing more than the reason, the problem, action, solution, the Hegelian dialectic to force the 1947 National Security Act, or the National Security Act of 1947. And what did the National Security Act of 1947 force on to America, the United States, or the Republic of the United States of America? Well, let's see. It created the NSC, which is the predecessor to the NSA. It also established the CIA. It also established the War Department and the Navy Department. They merged into a single Department of Defense, which at that time wasn't called the DoD or the Department of Defense. It was called the Military Establishment, which morphed into the Department of Defense. But the U.S. did not start biological warfare. No. They learned a lot from the Japanese and Emperor Hirohito. And if you want to really delve deep into the historical machinations, the foundations of biological warfare before 1947, listen to Douglas Duane Dietrich. He is a historian. He has a military degree, so to speak, and it is equivalent to a master's in library sciences. Okay? So Mr. Douglas Duane Dietrich knows what he's talking about. And he will explain to you, and I will leave links to a video that explains how Emperor Hirohito almost conquered the Republic of the United States of America. But before Hirohito, of course, the U.S. used the smallpox bioweapon. But before the U.S. used the smallpox bioweapon, what was used? Well, let me tell you what was used. Have you ever heard of the Black Death? Oh, you have? Well, you may not know, but the Black Death, or the plague that decimated Europe, that killed millions upon millions, was not caused by the rat. No, it was caused by the Asian gerbil. And here you're looking at the people who brought the Asian gerbil across Europe to conquer Europe. They were the Tartars, and they used these Asian gerbils as a biological weapon that was later on referred to the Black Death. Who were the Tartars? And here, before we go into who the Tartars were, you can see the depictions of people in carts and people laying on the ground. All the Europeans just decimated from the Black Death or that menacing Asian gerbil that were infected with fleas that carried the Black Death, supposedly. And this is not just my opinion. You have the studies from the University of Oslo to, really understand the history of the Black Death, where it came from, and what route it took. Now, back to the Tartars. Who were the Tartars? Well, the Tartars were the Mongols. The Mongols, of course, and you see here in this Wikipedia documentation, historical documentation, I'm sure it's supported by the Mongol-Tartar Golden Horde forces led by Batu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan. Now, you will know that Genghis Khan was the tyrant, the barbarian that swept across the East, the Middle East, the Near East, swept across Europe using these gerbils, these Asian gerbils, as a bioweapon to kill millions upon millions before even one of his soldiers stepped foot on European land or any land that he was invading. And again, the Mongols are the progenitors. They are the ones that are now called the Khazarians. The Khazarians are now the ones that call themselves Jews. They're not Jews. Once again, watch my videos at the Anti-COINTELPRO Show and InstinctForSurvival.com, and you will find out through historical documentation, once again, who the Jews actually are. 90+%, even going up to the rate of 97 to 98%, genetically, the global self-proclaimed Jews worldwide are genetically Khazars who came from Genghis Khan, Kublai Khan, Attila the Hun, and so on and so forth. Another analogous statement to the depopulation of the Hispanic races. Here is an article from naturalnews.com, a very well-respected news site. Depopulation test run. 75% of children who received vaccines in Mexican town now dead or hospitalized. And this story delineates the annihilation of the Mexican race using, once again, the bioweapon, this time using an updated bioweapon directly into the veins. This is pre-chemtrails, back in the 1970s. The vaccines induced depopulations was attempted in Mexico in 1974. And this is because a document, concentration on this problem of how to reduce the population, was planned for 13 key countries, including India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nigeria, Mexico, Indonesia, Brazil, and the Philippines, Thailand, Egypt, Turkey, Ethiopia, and Colombia. Of those, The document singled out Mexico as having one of the highest and therefore most worrisome growth rates of all. The document read, perhaps the most significant population trend from the viewpoint of the United States is the prospect that Mexico's population will increase from 50 million in 1970 to over 130 million by the year 2000. This was an issue. Once again, folks, the Nazis that were in charge of the 1974 vaccine-induced population control attempt in Mexico, well, these Nazis have been in control of the United States, the corporation, the United States corporation, not the United States, not the Republic of the United States of America, but the United States corporation since World War II. Well, since before World War II was over, you will remember, or if you do remember, Operation Paperclip, in which at least 1,500 scientists and ex-Nazis, which I have read the numbers were much higher, around 5,000 to 7,000 ex-Nazi scientists and corporate heads and leaders of the Nazi SS regime were imported to the United States, this time not the United States corporation that is based in D.C., but the Republic of the United States of America, the 50 states. Now, they were imported and they were put in charge of, let's say, the predecessor of NASA, the Goddard Space Flight Museum, and then NASA, where Wernher von Braun used the V5 rocket that was used to decimate Europe in World War II. Okay? When the air raids were heard throughout the UK, well, they were heard because the V5 rocket, which is the predecessor to the rocket, well, it's the actual rocket that was used to allegedly take the U.S. to the moon, right? So they've been doing this for a long time. They have been involved in population control. They are not in the business of controlling their own racial stock, the Aryan white race. No, they're not. Their main objective is to control the masses of useless eaters, as they put it, the non-white races. Okay, you don't believe me? Well, here's one more analogous news article, one more actual documentation that is coming from the CDC, okay, that the Nazis had. The Nazis never went anywhere. They were imported to America, and they headed companies like the Goddard Space Flight Museum, NASA, and Bayer Aspirin. But not only those, but most of the Fortune 500 companies of the time that have grown into behemoths currently. IBM being one of them, right? CDC says Ebola vaccine only works on white people. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Do you hear me? Do you get what I'm saying, folks? The CDC, folks, admits that the Ebola vaccine, and as you have just seen, folks, were used in 1974 to decimate the non-white Latin populations and other populations, other non-white populations around the world. So here is another article that I'm not going to read the whole thing because I realize that this video is getting a tad long. But this basically delineates The Center of Disease Control, which is headquartered in Atlanta, has released a statement saying the trial vaccine for deadly Ebola virus will only work on those with white skin. And once again, I will leave the links. I will leave the screen caps. And you will be able to read all of the historical documentation that I delineated. And it all boils down to this, folks. If you think that you have been allowed to enter Nazi, corporate, fascist controlled America to take over, nothing could be further from the truth. If you think that the world, and the supposed dying white race needs to repopulate their countries with the Mongol hordes across the world, the Muslims, the Hispanics, and my son is half Mexican, okay? So I'm not a racist, but go ahead and call me a racist if that makes you feel better about the historical documentation that I am putting forward. If that makes you feel powerful, because you don't have historical documentation, you don't have intelligent debate, hell, you don't have intelligence, all you have is anger. Pick up a book, okay? Learn history, because if you do not study and learn history, then you're quite simply doomed. You're not only doomed to repeat it, but you are going to be doomed. You're going to be decimated. You're not being welcomed with open arms into America to take over. You think Obama controls America? No. The Nazis, the corporate fascists, the white man that has been on top since day one is still on top. He is not welcoming you in so that you can slit his throat. The power structure is not welcoming you in so that you can degenerate our European countries into the squalor that you came from. Okay? The Middle East has never created a car, has never created anything of creative and positive value to the world. Indians, the same thing. Yes, they have nuclear weapons, but they got them from the white man. They didn't get nuclear weapons. They didn't get civilization building mechanisms. They didn't build them themselves. Like Obama tells you, you didn't build this. No, the white civilization did. The white people of history created civilization, created art, created ecological volunteerism. They created volunteerism as a whole. I worked for the Red Cross for a number of years, and you will never see, you might see a handful of non-whites peppered through these disasters, but 99.9% of the volunteers in the American Red Cross are white. It is white people that have always been there to lend a helping hand to those of all races that need a helping hand, because they have not created, they have only hated the white race that has created civilization and beauty and art. And once again, I'm just simply saying this because I don't want to see a world with just white homogenous people. I don't want to see a world with just black, with just Middle Eastern, with Asian. No, I want to see a world full of all the different colors of the rainbow. The white European countries and peoples of those countries, the white Europeans that settled and civilized America and the world. This is a warning, not coming from a racist standpoint, although I really don't care if somebody calls me racist, could care less. It's a meaningless word. This is a brief history of U.S. and global biowarfare, and a warning. A warning to all that would commit white genocide. A warning to all of the non-white races who think that you're going to actually be allowed to invade, take over, and genocide by anger because you have not succeeded in life. And then you have the controllers of society using you like they use all tools to wield for their purposes. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this history of biowarfare and the warning that all people, white and like, other words, troll, anti-Semite, they have no more meaning because they have been watered down to that extent and overused by all of the ignorant masses who cannot give an intelligent retort. They cannot have an intelligent debate, because to have an intelligent debate, you have to have intelligence. You have to be fueled by the willingness to learn and not